Frank Nazar has yet another multi-point game as the Blackhawks play spoiler against the Habs.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, quick reminder off the jump to please go and hit that like button, hop in the comment section below, and to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, all of which is 100% free, won't cost you anything, helps me out in a massive way as I'm now on the climb to 3,000 subscribers. But happy Tuesday, everyone. Thank you all again for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. What an atmosphere last night at the Bell Center with the Blackhawks facing off against the Montreal Canadiens as they had an opportunity to clinch the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. All they need is 2 points over their final two games, aka a win last night over the Blackhawks would have gotten them into the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it was not to be, with the Blackhawks playing spoiler to take down the Canadiens 4-3 in a shootout and also pick up their third win over the past 5 games. Definitely one of the most fun games of the entire season. The intensity and just the overall excitement and the buzz at the Bell Center last night, right from the opening whistle. Then, of course, we also got to see 2024 fifth overall pick Ivan Demidov make his long-awaited NHL debut, and we also got to see Blackhawks 2022 second-round pick Ryan Green play in his first NHL game. So lots to be excited for, lots to get into on today's show from this entertaining matchup last night. The first thing I got to get to, though, undoubtedly, Blackhawks fans, is Ivan Demidov, because the opening 20 minutes were the Ivan Demidov show, and it was probably the exact opposite start to his NHL career that we were hoping for as Blackhawks fans. And as I've mentioned on the last couple of shows, because of course Ivan Demidov would make his NHL debut against the Blackhawks, because of course it would start off the way that it did. The opening 15 minutes, Demidov was everywhere. Picked up a primary assist and tallied his first career NHL goal in the opening 20 minutes. The first point of his, the primary assist to set up Alex Newhook. He absolutely left Connor Murphy in the dust, and this is a veteran, the longest tenured member of the Chicago Blackhawks, a staple in the defensive zone and someone who's trusted upon in all the defensive situations. Ivan Demidov left him in the dust with a little quick shimmy to give himself some separation. He is so shifty. His edge work is so incredible. And what I mentioned on the show yesterday, Blackhawks fans, and as someone who gassed up Ivan Demidov all throughout last summer, I said many, many times he would be the player I personally would take with the second overall pick, even though he does have a different style of skating, and there are some concerns about maybe that leading to injury or the long-term abilities of how he goes about his skating mechanics. What I said throughout the summer and what I specifically said yesterday is, while it is different, he's so good at it and it's so unique that from what I've seen in video and highlights that I've watched of Demidov so far in his career, that it really gave defensemen fits just because it was so unusual compared to what they normally see from skaters coming their way with a full head of speed down the ice. And I think that was a great example of it from Connor Murphy, like just a different style of edge work that Ivan Demidov possesses, along with an incredible playmaking ability, sets up Alex Newhook right out in front to put the Canadiens up 1-0. The Bell Center is going absolutely crazy, but they were about to get nuttier because not that long later, Demidov takes advantage of a long stretch pass that banks off the end boards. He shows off his speed to create a breakaway opportunity and a nifty forehand backhand maneuver to put it past Arvid Soderblom. And just like that, it's 2-0 Montreal. Ivan Demidov has officially arrived, a primary assist, his first NHL goal. And as a Blackhawks fan, especially as someone who gassed up Ivan Demidov, like I said all last summer, it was just like, I knew it. I knew this kid had the goods. And listen, Blackhawks fans, one game in one period truly does not dictate whether or not the Blackhawks made the right or wrong decision by taking Levshunov with the second overall pick and letting Ivan Demidov slide. However, the point that I really made throughout the summer in terms of my reasoning why they should take Demidov, that absolutely remains, and it became more prevalent last night 100%. Because while I firmly believe Artem Levshunov is going to be a solid player for a long, long time, kid's only 19 years old, looks like he can handle his own in a top 4 role immediately. He's already got good size. You'd like to think as he continues to gain weight and get stronger and, mature into a grown man, he's only going to be more capable in the defensive zone, and hopefully he'll continue to further develop his offensive skill set. I really believe Levshunov is going to be a solid NHLer, but make no mistake about it, Ivan Demidov is the player who has the higher upside between the two. And I firmly felt like the Blackhawks were in a position to go upside with the second overall pick last year, especially in the forward group, because even prior to having Artem Levshunov on the back end in this prospect pool, it was a pretty deep blue line for the Blackhawks. It wasn't like they absolutely had to go with a right-handed defenseman there. And with the way that Sam Rinzel has developed over the last season and a half, if the Blackhawks truly feel like he can be a Brock Faber level player, which I know Frank Nazar has talked about. Obviously, Rinzel is getting the lion's share of opportunities on the power play. He played over 26 minutes last night for the Blackhawks. Like, he looks fully comfortable already in a top pairing role along with Alex Vlasic. Considering how good he already looks, it makes taking a right-handed defenseman second overall, especially someone who does not have the offensive upside that Sam Rinzel does, because he just doesn't have the skating or the offensive abilities that Sammy possesses. It makes taking Levshunov with the second overall pick instead of Demidov an even tougher pill to swallow. But again, Blackhawks fans, I know it was tough to act logically after Demidov started his NHL career the way that he did last night. I firmly believe he's going to be an all-star level player in this league, but we don't know for sure. And I think we got to hold judgment a little bit until we understand truly what Ivan Demidov and Artem Levshunov are in this league. And it's going to be a long time until we truly know that. But the narrative definitely remains, in my opinion, Ivan Demidov has elite NHL player / all-star type of upside. And I don't know necessarily if Artem Levshunov has that same skill set. And to think that the Blackhawks could have had this kid along with Connor Bedard, if he continues to look this way, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow for all of us Blackhawks fans. But what a start to Ivan Demidov's NHL career. I will have more on Demidov here in just a moment, Blackhawks fans. But I also, of course, wanted to touch on Ryan Green. Number 20 is what he's rocking, going no bucket for his rookie lap, by the way, as all the Blackhawks NHL debutants have over the last couple of years. The trend started with Kevin Korchinski and Connor Bedard, of course, in Boston a couple of years ago. Love to see that continue here. But Ryan Green centered the Blackhawks' third line last night in his NHL debut. I thought this was a really good spot for him in the lineup along with Nick Foligno and Oliver Moore, a more defensive-oriented style line. And as I talked about yesterday, when I went through what Blackhawks fans can precisely expect from Ryan Green, that's really what it is. I compared him to a Frank Nazar and Oliver Moore style player on the defensive side of things. He does not possess the same type of upside that Frank or even Oliver has, because he's just not that level of a skater. While he is a decent skater, he mostly uses it in a 200-foot style game, usually a responsible player on the defensive side of things, trusted to be a center iceman, and I do believe he can play the center ice position at this level. Will be interesting to see if he winds up being a wing more permanently, just because of the Blackhawks center depth in the prospect pool. But the Blackhawks have been really happy with the way that Ryan Green has filled out his frame over the last couple of years and gotten a lot harder to play against. And we heard Frank Nazar prior to puck drop last night compare Ryan Green to Joel Eriksson of the Minnesota Wild. Wow, listen, I'm someone that's been super high on Ryan Green the last couple of years. It's why I put him in my bold predictions to start the year that'll score his first NHL goal. He's got one more game here this evening to prove me right. I've been pumping Ryan Green's tires for a long time now. I admittedly don't think he's going to be as good defensively as Joel Eriksson is for Minnesota. Like, he's one of the best forwards in all of hockey. I don't think Ryan Green, is going to be like that or like a Jason Dickinson style guy, but that's what he is capable of doing. And I do think he can chip in a little bit on the offensive side of things. I think he's capable of being the bumper role on the second power play unit. We've seen him in that spot have success for Boston University over the last couple of years. Was a little bit of a struggling first NHL game for Ryan Green, but, a lot going on for him, making his debut up in Montreal with a chaotic atmosphere against a team that was kind of in a must-win situation. No shots on goal for Green, but he did chip in for 3 block shots. Also had 3 giveaways, though, and won just 3 of 9 faceoffs. But again, someone I'm super high on, and hopefully he'll be able to bounce back, get rid of some of those first game jitters, and close out the season on a high note here tonight against Ottawa. But when the Blackhawks went down 2-0 after Ivan Demidov took over in the opening 20 minutes, you know who it was that led the charge for the Blackhawks last night? It shouldn't be all that surprising. It was my boy, Frank the Tank Nazar, baby. This kid is an absolute stud, Blackhawks fans, and it's so cool to see Frank developing into the player that I always thought he was going to be right in front of my eyes. And if you're someone who's listened or watched the podcast for a long time, then you know Frank Nazar was just on my 24-25 Blackhawks midseason prospect rankings. He was all the way at the top at number 1. And he's been inside the top 2 for me, outside of Connor Bedard. He's really the prospect I've had the highest hopes for in this organization for a long time. And I remember going back to a couple of years ago having Hadi Kalikesh from Locked On NHL on the podcast. And he was someone who said Frank Nazar, he firmly believed, was the second best prospect in the 2022 NHL draft. And for him to go 13th, that was an absolute blessing for the Blackhawks. And really ever since then, following along with Frank, watching him at that first Blackhawks development camp as a kid who was basically my size, right? Like 5'7", 5'8". He's probably like 5'9", but not the biggest kid, only about 170, 180 pounds, but not afraid to mix it up, go to the dirty areas. The hustle is on display at all times. And that's exactly the way that Frank Nazar goes about his business in the NHL. And it is so freaking fun to watch. This kid legitimately could have had 4 or 5 points last night. Tyler Bertuzzi kind of fanned on a backdoor setup. Frank was everywhere last night. Best player on the ice, in my opinion, for the Blackhawks, with them trailing 2-0 late in the first period. Great play by Nazar to set up Tyler Bertuzzi far side for his 23rd goal of the season on the power play. That got the Blackhawks on the board and cut their deficit to 2-1 going into the second. Shout out to Connor Bedard for picking up the secondary assist as well with a beautiful zone entry. And then in the final moments of the second period, it was Nazar who struck on the power play a nasty one-timer. Back-to-back games with Frank Nazar rifling home a one-timer. I love to see that contribution on the power play. If Frankie can start ripping them from the left dot, we might have to start putting him there more, because while I love Connor Bedard, I love his shooting ability. Even though he's yet to hit 30 in his first 2 NHL campaigns, I believe he's going to be a shoo-in for 30 goals in this league. Frank Nazar might have the better one-timer than him at this point in time. I know Bedsy just ripped a one-timer from Rinzel against the Winnipeg Jets, but feels like Frank Nazar basically has that same skill set. And what I love about Frank is his ability to utilize his speed, enter the offensive zone, get things established for the Blackhawks. After Bedard entered the zone, we saw Nazar utilize his speed to create a 2-on-1 and set up Tyler Bertuzzi. It's just all coming together for this kid right now, and this now gives him 3 multi-point efforts in his last 6 games. He also chipped in for 2 block shots, 1 hit, and of course, ended up with a nasty shootout winner for the Blackhawks, despite no one really thinking it found the back of the net. Really caused some confusion between the officials at the Bell Center. Brendan Gallagher of the Canadiens was arguing with the officials. It was quite the scene, but it was quite a night for my boy, Frank the Tank Nazar. And there were a ton of tweets coming out from noteworthy hockey analysts, hockey media members, and whatnot who were watching this game because the Habs had an opportunity to clinch a playoff spot. And so many of them talked about Frank Nazar. He just makes winning style hockey plays, Blackhawks fans. The hustle, the ability to kill penalties, the ability to create opportunities while shorthanded, the ability to chip in on the power play, the ability to score goals. What can't Frank Nazar do? This kid is an absolute stud. I love that he's playing his best hockey of the year late in the season. Should give him a huge confidence boost going into the offseason. And man, I know there are loads of people excited to see what Frank the Tank can do in a full 82-game campaign next season for the Blackhawks. What a night out of Frank Nazar. With the game then tied 2-2 going into the third period, definitely got to give a shout out to Lukas Reichel, who's been utilized frustratingly throughout the course of the last 2 seasons. We've seen him healthy scratched a couple of times late here this season. He winds up showing off his wheels to create a mini breakaway opportunity. Beautiful saucer pass by Landon Slaggert as well to set it all up. Puck just barely trickles through Sam Montembeault in net for Montreal. That put the Blackhawks ahead 3-2 there late in the third period. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, Blackhawks fans, is not only because I want to give my boy Lukas Reichel credit, but I also want you all to go back and look at this goal and watch the lack of effort from number 93 on Montreal, Ivan Demidov. Yeah, he's an offensive phenom, and he sure looks like an all-star caliber player. But the lack of hustle in his first NHL game, in a game where his team needs to win, at a point in this game where it was tied 2-2 in the final minutes of the third period, and he legitimately lollygagged back on defense and allowed Lukas Reichel to get a breakaway opportunity and put the Blackhawks ahead 3-2. Fortunately for Demidov, the officials made a terrible call in the final moments of regulation. Connor Murphy called for a penalty he simply did not commit. The Habs were able to tie it up 3-3 and send this one on into overtime. But I thought that was a telling moment of Ivan Demidov. Yes, rookie mistakes happen, but that wasn't a rookie mistake. That was just a flat-out lack of effort. But love to see the Blackhawks be able to wind up getting the job done in the shootout. Definitely got to give a shout out to Arvid Soderblom. Played phenomenal all night long. Stopped 18 of the 21 shots that he faced in regulation. And he also stopped all 3 shots that he faced in the shootout, an area where he's really struggled throughout the course of his NHL career so far. So funny that he steps up to the plate and has his best go in the shootout when the Canadiens need him not to the most. Awesome end to Arvid Soderblom's year as Spencer Knight is set to get the start in the season finale this evening against the Ottawa Senators. Love to see the kids rise to the occasion. Frank Nazar, the player of the game, in my opinion, even though Ivan Demidov somehow biasly got the number 1 star of the game. Frank Nazar was the real one who stole the show here. Love to see Lukas Reichel with a big goal in the third period. Love to see Arvid Soderblom play well in his final outing of the season. Sam Rinzel looked sharp once again on the Blackhawks blue line with over 26 minutes of time on ice. Connor Bedard picked up a secondary assist. 3 wins for the Blackhawks now in their last 5 games, playing probably their best hockey of the season, sadly, as it's about to come to a close. But an awesome intensity and atmosphere last night at the Bell Center. Really has me missing this team playing postseason hockey. But coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll get into a final look at the Tankathon standings as we hit the final days of the NHL regular season. But first, I got to talk to you all real quick about Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Well, then go and crack into a great source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. And Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts there is, with each 1 ounce serving having over 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily nutritional value. Plus, they're packed with fiber to help keep you feeling fuller longer. And who doesn't love a good pistachio? I know I certainly do. I can literally sit there eating them and cracking them all day long. And that satisfying crack of opening every shell, it's like a little mini snack meditation. So whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch by visiting wonderfulpistachios.com in order to learn more. Again, that's wonderfulpistachios.com to check it out today. Segment 2 with the Blackhawks now down to their final game of the regular season tonight. I did want to get into one final update on the Tankathon standings and where the Blackhawks sit at this point. And with the Hawks on Saturday picking up a point in their 5-4 shootout loss to the Winnipeg Jets, that officially clinched them. That officially gave them the second best odds to win the 2025 NHL Draft Lottery. They have officially clinched up that second spot. And by the way, the NHL Draft Lottery, the date and time isn't officially set in stone as of now, but it will be held on either March 5th or March 6th. So just a couple weeks away from right now, Blackhawks fans. Make sure to star that one on the calendar. But yes, the Blackhawks are officially locked into that number 2 spot, meaning the San Jose Sharks will have the best odds for the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NHL Draft. They're currently 20, 49, and 12 on the season through 81 games, giving them 52 points, with the Blackhawks being on a nice stretch to close out the year that really largened the gap between these two, as it was, up until about a week ago, 2-horse race for the best odds in the 2025 draft. Blackhawks are now 24, 46, and 11 following their shootout win last night in Montreal. One final game to go, of course, here tonight in Ottawa. They have 59 points now on the season, 7 more than the San Jose Sharks. They will have a 13.5% chance of winning the NHL Draft Lottery for the second consecutive season. At number 3, the Nashville Predators, basically where they've been all season long. Massively disappointing year out of them. They're 29, 44, and 8 with 1 game left on the schedule, giving them 66 points. They will officially have an 11.5% chance of winning the NHL Draft Lottery. Those top 3 odds, they're already set in stone, but after that, 4 through 9 really is going to be determined here in the final days of the regular season. The Boston Bruins, with all the losing they've been doing here in the home stretch of the season, have certainly helped themselves out in their future by giving themselves a better chance at selecting a high pick in this year's draft. They're 33, 39, and 9 now on the season in 81 games, giving them 75 points. Should they finish in the 4th spot, that will give them a 9.5% chance at winning the draft lottery. Just 1 point ahead of them, though, is the Seattle Kraken, currently in the 5 spot with a 35, 40, and 6 record in 81 games, giving them 76 points. So the Bruins, I'm sure, will be trying to drop this last game to finish at number 4. If the Kraken lose their final game and the Bruins lose their final game, they'll wind up at number 5 and have an 8.5% chance of winning the lottery. Then the Philadelphia Flyers also have 76 points, but they have 2 games left on the schedule. They're 33, 37, and 10. The 6th spot gives you a 7.5% chance of winning the lottery. The Buffalo Sabres, 1 point ahead of both Seattle and Philadelphia. They're 35, 38, and 7 with 2 games left on the schedule. And just considering the way the Buffalo Sabres have gone about things, I mean, this organization can't even tank right. They've been winning a ton here late in the year, and with them having 2 games left, I wouldn't be surprised if they jumped both of the teams ahead of them and just completely ruined their odds of getting the number 1 overall pick. They currently have a 6.5% chance, but again, 2 games left for them to get in the win column, and just 1 point ahead of them is both the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Anaheim Ducks. Pittsburgh currently in the 8th spot with 78 points in 81 games. That would give them a 6.0% chance at the number 1 pick, while the Ducks in the 9th spot with 78 points, 2 games left in their season. That currently gives them a 5.0% chance of winning the lottery. So from the Boston Bruins at number 4, they have 75 points, to the Anaheim Ducks in the 9th spot, they have 78 points. There's just a 3-point gap between those 5 teams. So there still could be a lot of mixing in numbers 4 through 9 in these final days of the season. We'll see what goes down as we're now into the final week before the Stanley Cup playoffs begin. But there's my final look at the Tankathon standings, with the Hawks having 1 game left in the season. And coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, I'll preview that final game of the season as the Hawks take on the Ottawa Senators in the back end of their back-to-back. Real quick, though, I do got to talk to you all first about Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts who are ready to help you take your business to the next level. And Upwork gives businesses the flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or even a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. And what I personally love about Upwork is their cost-effective growth. Instead of having to hire full-time, Upwork helps you find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. And to go and check it out right now, all you got to do is visit Upwork.com, and you'll be able to post your job for free. Again, that's Upwork, UPWORK.com, to connect with top-tier talent and to grow your business today. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, up until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned, you can get local analysis on a national scale with the coverage you love from Locked On. And you can easily find Locked On NHL Game Night right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, one final ride for the 2024-2025 regular season here tonight when the Blackhawks take on the Ottawa Senators in the back end of their back-to-back up in Canada. Once again, this game this evening starting at 6 p.m. Central Time. No spoiler to be played for the Blackhawks here tonight, as the Senators have basically all but clinched that top wildcard spot out in the Eastern Conference. There is still a chance for them to go and get the 3 spot in the Atlantic Division, but in order for that to happen, they'd have to win both of their games, and they'd also need the Florida Panthers to lose their final game of the regular season, which isn't the most likely outcome, but definitely still is possible. So maybe, I guess, actually, the Blackhawks can find a way to play a little bit of spoiler here this evening, but it's been a good run for the Blackhawks to close out the year. As I talked about in segment 1, 3 wins in their last 5 games, going for 4-6 to close out the season. And one thing I wanted to add as well here before wrapping up today's episode is the overall success the Blackhawks have had against the Senators organization for the last decade and a half. It was something I talked about earlier on in the year before the first meeting between these two teams. The Blackhawks actually, of course, went on to lose that game 4-3 in a shootout, and they've now actually lost their last 2 meetings to the Senators. But all in all, since the start of 2011, the Hawks have just had the Sens number. In 22 matchups since the start of 2022, the Hawks are in 22 matchups against Ottawa since the start of 2011, the Hawks are 17-3-2. And excluding the last 2 games, they're 17-2-1. So incredible success rate against the Senators. Hopefully that'll be the case again here tonight for this team to go into the offseason on a high note, to feel really good about all of the youth they had burst onto the scene late in the season, continue to add some chemistry with one another, hopefully continue to make some positive changes to this roster moving forward, and go and make a good run of it to open up next year in the fall and be a little bit more confident in where this team is going. But as far as the Blackhawks lineup here tonight, don't really expect it to be all that different in terms of what we saw last night in Montreal. Fully expect Ryan Donato, Connor Bedard, and Ilya Mikheyev to serve as the top line. By the way, I had Ivan Demidov and Ilya Mikheyev to score a goal last night. Mikheyev legitimately had 6 primetime opportunities, one of them on a 4-on-1 break. Phenomenal play by Artem Levshinov, by the way, to spring that rush. Couldn't find the back of the net because, of course, but Mikheyev is just like Frank Nazar. He just makes so many winning hockey plays, brings his best effort night in and night out, and gives himself chances seemingly every game. I love the Donato, Bedard, and Ilya Mikheyev top line. Also love the way this Teravainen, Frank Nazar, Tyler Bertuzzi second line has been rolling here as of late. Bertuzzi, 23 goals in his first season as a Blackhawk. I know the consistency wasn't there, but all things considered, how he was utilized, the struggles of this offense as a whole this year, definitely not a terrible start to his Blackhawks tenure. Needs to be ready right out of the gate, though, next season, especially if he's given a top-line opportunity again with Connor Bedard. The third line, I don't see any reason to switch up the Nick Foligno, Ryan Green, Oliver Moore trio that I think makes a lot of sense and has good defensive abilities all across the board there. And then I'd expect to see Landon Slager, Joe Veleno, and Lucas Reichel remain as the fourth line. I thought they had a really solid night last night. That would leave Philip Kurashev as the odd man out, and I expect that game on Saturday against Winnipeg was the last game of Philip Kurashev's Blackhawks tenure. Defensively, Alex Vlasic, Sam Renzel, potentially potentially the top pairing of the future for the Blackhawks. No reason to be splitting them up. No reason to not have Sam Rinzel lead the team in time on ice here tonight. I do, though, expect after Louis Crevier drew into the lineup last night and skated on the second pairing with Connor Murphy, I think that was just giving Louis Crevier one final game rep before the season comes to a close. Fully anticipate Kevin Korchinski jumping back into the lineup and playing on the second pairing with Murphy, and that would leave Wyatt Kaiser and Artem Levshinov, who have been together the last handful of games, rounding things out on the third pairing for the Blackhawks. And then with Arvid Soderblom going last night, that sets up Spencer Knight to get the nod in the season finale for the Blackhawks. One final ride here tonight up in Ottawa. Let's end the 2024-25 regular season with a bang and pick up back-to-back wins for what I believe would just be the third time throughout the entire season. But that's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Thank you all again for everyone who joined me throughout all of my previews and all of my episodes that I dropped in the 24-25 regular season. Even though the Blackhawks were down in the dumps once again, I saw some pretty great growth out of the show, and I'm definitely encouraged of where it's going to be once the Blackhawks start to play more competitive hockey once again. There's going to be more intrigue around this team with all the youth up on the NHL roster, and that's going to continue to be the case these next couple of seasons, even though it was another year in the bottom three, Blackhawks fans. The future for this organization is super bright, and I couldn't be more excited to break it down for you all here on Locked On Blackhawks. Couldn't be more excited to get into my NHL Draft coverage starting later on this week, as there won't be any more Blackhawks games to cover. That's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Make sure you subscribe to the show on YouTube. Follow the podcast for free. That way you can get every episode as soon as it's uploaded each and every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and check me out on X at Jack Bushman2. And make sure to follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.